Ladies and gentlemen, a family court in Delhi has observed that prenuptial agreement should be made mandatory before people get married, to make couples aware of the risks of marriage and to avoid mental cruelty. The court was hearing the case of a couple who got married in Uttar Pradesh back in 2011 and had been involved in legal battles for the last 7 years, and they refused to get a divorce with mutual consent, accusing each other of committing cruelty. Let's first understand what exactly is a prenuptial agreement. It has a Western origin, and it basically is a legal contract signed by a couple before they get married, and that determines the ownership rights of their respective assets if the marriage breaks down later. The document also comprises terms and conditions like adultery, guardianship, etc. Now, here's what its supporters argue. Number one, that prenuptial agreements facilitate the process of seeking maintenance speedily. Another argument is that it protects and secures the child's future in a marriage, in a broken marriage rather. Third, financially secures the future of both partners, and so on and so forth. But those against it say that marriage is not a contract, it is an emotion, a promise of companionship. Now, in India, prenuptial agreements so far are not valid. So on the show tonight, we discuss whether India and Indians are ready to make prenuptial agreements mandatory. Let me first introduce my guests to you tonight. I'm joined by Deepika Narayan Bhardwaj. She's an activist and documentary filmmaker, and somebody who's also been very vocal about the cruelty that men face in relationships and marriage. Ishani Sharma, lawyer, joins us. Talish Ray, also advocate, joins us on the show, and Subhash Jha, advocate, also joins us tonight. Good evening and welcome to all of you. Deepika, I'd like to start with you. You're somebody who supports having prenuptial agreements in a marriage. What makes you think and what makes you say that we as Indians are ready to have such a contract, such a bond before we marry our partners?
Shreya, thank you so much for having me on the show and especially discussing this very, very important judgment. This is an unprecedented judgment. Perhaps for the first time, a family court judge is talking about prenuptial agreements. A lot of people think that we are still not a country to talk about a agreement or a contract like this, but I strongly feel that we have come that far. Of course, I don't think so. I'm in the favor of mandating it, and I think it should be left to the couple's choice whether they want to get into an agreement like this or not. But the most important reason why I support this strongly, Shreya, is we're living in 21st century. There are educated couples who are getting married with pomp and show, but within 1 month, within 2 months, within few years, the marriage breaks down. Just in this case, the marriage broke down pretty early in the marriage. There was separation, and then they have been fighting a very, very tough battle for the last 7 years. Both would want to get separated. Both have disputes going on regarding maintenance and custody. All of these things can be taken care of very, very easily in an agreement. And, I'm on your show on a Karwa Chauth. So to just lighten the mood, I was thinking about this.
The irony of it that on Karwa Chauth we are talking about this.
Yeah, no, but I think it's just, sorting a relationship. I don't think so there is anything wrong in having an agreement on how you want to live your life, or if a separation happens, how you amicably want to have a separation. Just to give you an example, today there are a lot of women who would not want to observe a Karwa Chauth fast, which is absolutely fine. There may be some guy who would think that his wife may want to have a Karwa Chauth. So marriages are actually, Shreya, breaking down on smaller things like this. So prenuptial agreement can basically sort out the expectations of both the husband and wife, that these are the terms and conditions on which our marriage is based. And if somebody falters, then, one fault, second fault, third fault, these are the repercussions. Both know how exactly the marriage should work, and both are absolutely comfortable on a mutual decision. So I think we really, really need to have prenuptial agreements legalized in India now.
Okay, Subhash Jha, your thoughts on it. Marriage is, of course, considered to be made in heaven in this country and everywhere in the world, not just in this country. It's about companionship, it's about love, it's about forming bonds till the very end of life. But we also have the reality of the 1% stat that comes in India's case when it comes to divorces. This 1% is a very small number which is reported. We all know that there exist unhappy marriages. People are, carrying on with their marriages due to several reasons. Wouldn't a prenup agreement make it smoother, easier, and more convenient for both partners to walk away from an unhappy marriage smoothly and respectfully?
So, couple of Shreya, is that addressed towards me? Were you addressing me, or was it for Ishani?
This was for Subhash Jha, Talish, but please go ahead. You can go ahead too.
So, okay, sorry. So, Mr. Jha, with your permission, sir. So, a couple of things that I wanted to first bring clarity on in terms of the fact that I think you mentioned the case that has been by a Delhi family court, which has talked about prenup agreements. So I just wanted to bring clarity in terms of the fact that the court there has said this by way of an obiter. And the court also qualified it. They qualified it, the Honorable Judge qualified it by saying that they are looking at the purpose of Family Court Act, which is to bring a quietus to all warring couples within a marriage. And therefore, the court felt that there is a need now that prenup should be moved about, but they should be done after due counseling and registered in front of due authority. So it is not to be entered just on its own, because they are aware of the fact that as such, when marriages take place in India, there isn't as much equality that is granted to both genders. And a prenup, therefore, being a contract of a certain nature, which decides the rights and responsibilities of parties under various conditions that take place, especially in case they are to part ways, would need to be carefully looked upon and weighed so that both the parties make a free and independent choice. That's one part. The second part about prenups, which I did want to bring about as clarity, is so far as the rights of children go. Now, please remember that any child that is born out of wedlock or even otherwise is protected under the UN Child Rights, which basically mean that it is recognized that children have a special category of rights for which the state via the court actually becomes what is known as in loco parentis. And that which is ordained in terms of by the state and a UN treaty in that sense of child rights cannot be pushed aside by a contract that is there, be it the fact that that contract may be under any act, whether it is under various religious codes or in terms of any other agreement between private parties. So that's those are the two clarity that I wanted to bring about. Now, so far as your question goes in terms of is it the need of the hour? Well, that really depends on how one views marriage. Now, there are two cross sections of society where we look at traditionally how marriage is being viewed as. In terms of Indian laws, it has been viewed as a sacrament, an act ordained by something beyond ourselves. Some may refer to it as God, some may refer to it as destiny, whatever it might be. And that which is ordained by something outside of control of humans, therefore cannot be in that sense regulated by contract. But that's only for certain religions. Please understand that there are certain other religions that look at marriage as a contract, for example, Islam. And therefore, prenup was accepted in a J&K decision in terms of the fact that an Islamic marriage is considered that of a contract between two parties, a man and a woman, and therefore prenups were taken in. Also, prenups have been used not in terms of an entirety of contract, but there have been numerous cases, including one of the Bombay High Court, the Bombay Family Court, which came about, which said that you can look at this contract in terms of evidentiary value as to what was the mind of the parties. So technically, therefore, prenups are in that sense, while the word, whether prenups today are in existence, the fact remains no, they are not. But have they been accepted by the courts across board? Increasingly, we are seeing that courts are giving some sort of weightage in order to put a quietus to the acrimony that has come out, where we have started viewing marriage as something which is not just an act ordained by a force beyond human beings or God as it's called, but also as something which is of a lifestyle that two people choose to get together to form what is a partnership throughout their life, which is actually as such then only about being a lifestyle. So it depends on which school of thought that one is looking at in terms of how we approach it. So therefore, the philosophy behind how we understand a marriage then becomes very important when one is looking at the question of prenup. So in as much, if you were to look at whether the
which is
contract,
why the debate and the discussion arises, because
yes.
the understanding of marriage is different for different people. Let me bring in Subhash Jha now. Subhash Jha, do you resonate with this? The fact that it is more about the lifestyle and less about two people coming together and taking their future and present forward.
I feel not only the what the learned judge has said of a family court is certainly is not binding on any other court. What the High Court says, we go by the law of precedents, and the precedents are set always by the Constitutional Court, that is the High Court and the Supreme Court. So family courts, what here's the concern which has been echoed by the learned judge of the family court possibly could fall for consideration before the High Court or before the Supreme Court, and then possibly this could be carried forward. But I feel that there is a lot which is required to be done so far as the law on marriages, maintenance, etc. is concerned. It is creating, it is rather, if you see the family courts, we are clogged with litigation. We are clogged with 125 CRPC proceedings in the court of the magistrate, now in the court of the family court. How many acts do we have? Now, it started with in 1955 Hindu Marriage Act. Now, before 1955 Hindu Marriage Act, even a Hindu could marry 4 wives or 5 wives. There was no restrictions. For the first time, it was streamlined, and you can't have a Hindu cannot have second marriage. But at the same time, what was brought to the statute book was the law on divorce. Now, there is, for example, in Hindi, there is no word of divorce. There is no synonymous word to divorce. You may say talaq. Talaq is a Urdu word. So there is no word like it. It was never in existence. So it was never thought of. So it is creating, according to me, such prenuptial agreement. It is really not workable. Now, for example, now we under the Dowry Prohibition Act. Now there is a provision for making a list of what articles are being given by the in-laws or by the husband, etc. But does it work? We see day in and day out. Ultimately, our women folk and the men, both, the society is required to be educated. They are required to be told about the importance of the institution of marriage. And then, because of all these problems,
but that everybody is told, Subhash Jha, and to say that the word divorce did not exist doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in reality.
Yeah,
that's like saying we can't see symptoms of mental illnesses, so therefore mental illnesses don't exist. But they do exist. Let me bring in Ishani Sharma here. Ishani, I'll come back to you, Subhash Jha. Ishani, please go ahead.
So taking from what Mr. Jha was saying, it's the same thing that when we thought of marriage, when the Hindus of the country thought of marriage as being primarily a holy concept, and there was no concept of divorce or talaq, as you call it. So that was another era. With the codification of the law, with need of a codified law, a codified structure came in, and now marriage, apart from being a holy concept, is also a civilian contract between two parties. It was observed by High Court of Allahabad in, I think, Bhagwati Saran Singh versus Parmeshwari Nandar Singh. So it is also a civilian contract, and the moment we introduce divorce, there are the marriages registered under the Hindu Marriage Act which are seeking divorce. So as soon as the concept of divorce comes in, what we believed, there is a different side to how we look at it. So now I think it's time that prenups also come in. Prenups, as somebody just mentioned, that they should not be mandated, but they should be recognized. I mean, the romance, the holy side of it, the marriage is a sacrament, it's something beyond, as my learned
Yeah.
friend just mentioned.
Yeah,
that
everybody
is
loves it. I
beyond,
mean, who wouldn't
the
like to
human
be,
realm.
who wouldn't like to be in love? Who wouldn't like companionship? Who wouldn't like
Exactly.
partnership? But at
But
the end
what
of
is
the day, we do know that relationships
what
go
is my
sour.
plan B?
Shreya, there is a very recent
What is my
example that I
plan
would
B?
want to bring into the
Yeah.
debate right now, which is of Shikhar Dhawan. You know, in the beginning
Yeah.
of their marriage, Aisha had
Yeah.
said that she's got to settle in India, right? And that was the basis of their marriage, that Shikhar
Yeah.
thought that he's going to
Marriage.
have a companion here in his country. But what happened is she went back against the contract, or the decision that they made together, and then she continued to live in Australia. This man was left stranded here. He had to travel frequently to Australia. Eventually he had to give in to the decision of even having his son in another country. I don't think so it was, you know, really out
Yeah.
of his consent, but compulsion, because he was in a marital relationship and he could not do anything, right? So had there been a possibility of prenuptial agreement, especially what we are seeing, especially in countries abroad where these agreements are legal, people who have a lot at stake usually prefer to go into agreements like this, because otherwise the aftermath is exactly what we saw in Shikhar Dhawan's case. He had been spending from his pocket for the daughter of his ex-wife, which he was not supposed to do, but he was being made to do, right? Because he was honoring the contract of marriage, or the marriage that he was in. But if there was a prenuptial agreement between Aisha and Shikhar, possibly this thing would not have happened. And again, he's suffering for his child right now. He's not able to see his son. The access is not that frequent. If he could have gotten into a prenuptial agreement, again, those arrangements could have been sorted out. And taking a line from Mr. Jha's, what Mr. Jha said, since I work for men, Shreya, the men of this country are being made to run helter-skelter from one court to the another court. They are facing a 498A, they are facing a 125, they are facing a domestic violence act, they are facing at least 5 to 6 litigations at a time. It exhausts them. It is so traumatizing. Their parents have to run around not only in criminal cases, but several civil cases. And it is so bizarre that on exactly the same statements, you're fighting
Yeah,
at
you know,
least 6
Deepika, I
to
also
7
want to
litigations.
understand from you. There is no doubt, and we all would agree with the fact that women have for long suffered in this country when it comes to marriages, when it comes to being accused in fake cases and scenarios when it comes to women. But we also need to talk about the men. They have also suffered, and you're somebody who, has had experiences talking to them, meeting them, knowing them personally of what they went through. As compared to women, of course, there must be a far lesser number of men who come out and talk about such abuse that they face. But I'm sure there are many, right?
There is absolutely no doubt, Shreya, that in numbers, of course, there's no comparison. But I just wish to ask, does pain have any comparison according to only numbers? There are men who are committing suicide almost on a daily basis. Just today, Madhya Pradesh High Court has squashed a
No, I'm
case
so sorry. I want to
filed
come
by
in
the
here. I
wife
want to
against the
understand.
husband.
I am really sorry here.
Yeah.
How many men do
Yeah.
you know who
Talish,
have
please
been
go
burned
ahead.
for dowry, ma'am?
Yeah.
So, please don't try and tell me about the pain here, because at this point in time, you're beginning to sound like an apologist for patriarchy. As much as I agree about
Talish,
prenups, I am not going to
sorry.
get
I
into
am
this,
sorry.
because you are to tell me how many men do you know who have been burned for dowry, ma'am. I am very sorry, but this entire thing about pretending about the
Ladies,
child
one at a
itself.
time, please. This way, nobody will be able to
It's the high
understand.
courts that are saying that women are filing false cases,
Just
men are
because
being
the high courts are
victimized.
saying it
It's
does
not
not make
me.
it right,
It's
ma'am.
not me.
I am so
It's
sorry.
Supreme Court.
Please
It's
look
High
within
Court.
yourself and tell me how many do you know who have been burnt by dowry. I am so sorry,
Okay,
ma'am, but I am
Talish and
not going
Deepika,
to
one
get
at a
into this.
time, please.
You have no idea about the numbers that are there. Please don't try to
Okay,
represent here.
Talish,
No, Shreya, I am
Talish and
absolutely
Deepika, please,
appalled
I
at
request
this
you
manner
both.
of
Nobody will be
apologist
able to
defending
understand this
patriarchy.
way.
While these
You are
laws
being an
and their
apologist
procedures
for
are taking time,
false
it is
cases.
not
You are
time
being
to
an
turn around and
apologist
make
for
this
women
about
doing
holding
anything
up
that
a
they
flag
want.
for
Okay,
patriarchy.
Deepika and Talish, please. Listen, this way nobody will be able to understand.
And this
Talish,
is
you've made your
exactly why we
point.
need to have prenuptial
Deepika, please
agreements,
go ahead,
because
See,
respond.
men and women can be at
whatever
loggerheads like I and Talish are right now. We are just discussing
What-
and she's getting so hyper. I don't think so there is
I'm
need to
not
get
getting
hyper.
hyper, ma'am. I am merely telling you, please tell me a
Whatever-
case of a
what-
man who's been burned for dowry.
You presenting
are
a
not
point
being
of view,
able to
ma'am.
answer.
I am
you
presenting
both
a
made
point
your
of
point.
view.
You
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 both
don't need to
made your
call me names,
point.
please.
that there are
You don't need to
Talish,
describe who I
and
am.
Deepika, please. This is not the way we discuss topics here, discuss issues here on this show. You've both made your points. Ishani, please go ahead. Let's have a civil discussion. Let's not, talk over each other. And nobody will understand this way. Our audiences will not understand this way. We cannot have a healthy, constructive discussion. Ishani, please go ahead.
So just responding to all of this is that every law that has come into place has been misused. That doesn't mean, and there are bad people. It's not a bad women or bad men. People misusing, people trying to exploit the other party has always been in existence, and that has come across in every law, firstly. So, yeah, it's just not about men and women and who's good and who's bad. That's a never ending debate. Then I come to a very mundane example. Like whenever we enter into a contract with anybody, we do it for a futuristic goal. We do it to improvise our lives and add quality to work or whatever. So if we just look at marriage in a similar way, we don't enter into a contract to define the rights and liabilities and what when things get ugly. We enter into any contract for even basically for happy times. Similarly, for marriages, if I'm all for the romance and the holy alliance, but what is my plan B? We all need to have a plan B in order. What if things don't go as rosy as I have planned them to be? So I think prenups are a plan B, and also my personal, my personal experience as a lawyer. I personally feel it might sound absurd to a lot of people that if we actually start having prenups, it'll actually end up maybe reducing the number of divorces, or maybe lessening the struggle, because there are cases, as both my learned friends Deepika and Ms. Ray were talking about, that there are bad people on both the sides. There are people who actually do things to exploit the other party. So if the rights and liabilities are defined, and if I know this is all that I'm
Do you think if there is a prenup agreement before the marriage, both partners will know that this is what we settle at, and therefore we should work to at least have a healthy marriage and not break it ASAP, as perhaps happens now? Subhash Jha, agreed that this is probably not a very Indian concept. This is not original to our cultural concept. Agreed that this is a Western concept. It has come over the years towards this part of the world. But the fact of the matter is that marriages are also not the way they were back then. And perhaps, from the time of our mothers and grandmothers, we don't know. They say that they have been in happy marriages, but there are several women who have, suppressed their stories of unhappy marriages. Wouldn't that also provide an outlet, not just for the women, for the men also in the marriage, to have a convenient way out of an unhappy partnership?
Shreya, this issue is not as simple as it appears to be. It is possibly 38 years of my experience as a lawyer practicing in different courts, right up to the Supreme Court. I may tell you that this is not that very simple. You can't just have an agreement and just and keep quiet. The problem will be, it could create possibly more problems than seeking to resolve the problem, unless and until we have a system, foolproof system. This could be a beginning of our discussion and debate as to how what is to be done.
For example, what problems, Subhash Jha, what more problems will be created if a couple has a prenup agreement?
Shreya, I tell you what could be the problem. Where are you going to have this problem? Where are you going to have this agreement kept? Is it going to be a registered document? It is not going to be a registered document. Then the allegations could be that, look here, this agreement was signed by under pressure, under duress, under coercion, undue influence, threat. I mean, all sort of thing would be said. And then, therefore, I'm saying that ultimately it is a matter, it is a very, very serious matter. When we talk on this issue, we deliberate, we don't fight with each other. See, we may not agree with certain things, but then ultimately it is such a crucial and such a complex issue that our society has to be trained, has to be educated to understand the importance of the institution, the institution of our marriage system. We have to see to it that it lasts for a long, and it doesn't result into one month or 2 months or 1 year or 2 year or 3 years affair. Now, today, I was shocked. I was seeing
But
a
that is
newspaper.
happening without prenup agreements also, Subhash Jha.
But
Right
Mr.
now,
Jha,
couples don't have prenup
but
agreements.
Shreya,
They're
there are a
still
lot of
having a 1 month,
conversations
2 months,
happening in
7 month,
marriage
1 year
anyway, Shreya.
marriage.
And the newspaper very prominently portrayed a picture of two, a male and a female, possibly some film actress, that they are going to celebrate their first Karwa Chauth today. I mean, for 1 year, this kind of a celebration, full page advertisement. I mean, where are we heading for our institution? I'm father of two grown-up children, and married for almost 30 years, 34 years now. So therefore, I mean, you can't say that this marriage has to last. This agreement, making of agreement, prenuptial agreement is really not going to resolve unless and until we do something very drastically to strengthen the institution, to convince our population, our people, both males and females, that look here, this is such a pious institution, and both have to devote for each other. They have to be reciprocal to each other. And this
Subhash Jha,
institution has
I
to be
think it's a bit unfair
survive and
to
subsist for a
expect
long
the
time.
same kind of perception and understanding of concepts and institutions from your children that you had. I might have different perceptions and understandings of institutions and concepts than my parents and my grandparents. So there is a generational difference there, and therefore today's generation is perhaps more logical, more straightforward, more direct when it comes to institutions like this, and nothing wrong with that, because they're just saving themselves and their partner from the kind of legal battle, the long-drawn legal battle that comes with divorce. Deepika, you wanted to make a quick point.
Shreya,
Please go ahead, 30 seconds, and then Talishri, and I'm going to then wrap this discussion up.
The fabric of marriages has changed. The fabric of people's understanding of marriage has changed. So let's not fool ourselves by saying that we need to take drastic measures to strengthen institution of marriage. You can't school adults. Let's understand that. And as far as agreement being legalized is concerned, there is a concept of shared parenting which is emerging right now in the courts. Earlier, there was no concept of shared parenting. The kid either would be with the mother or with the father. The institution or the system will have to enhance itself, will have to progress according to how the society is changing. And prenuptial agreements are also a part of that change. Now, courts are accepting and documenting how parenting plan has to be in place. These things were not done earlier. Courts are now taking cognizance of it and understanding that a child needs both the parents. So the courts and the system will have to understand that prenuptial agreements are a need of the hour.
Yeah.
People want to talk about money. People want to have pre-decisions about money. There are women who are working very good packages. There are men who are earning very good packages. So there are a lot of men who say that if the divorce is happening, why should I be made to forced to pay alimony? So these conversations are happening, and it's better that the system comes in place and legalizes it and builds the system around it so that nobody is exploited. I understand there could be exploitation in this, but it is a system that has to make the system durust. So I think I'm all for prenuptial agreement.
Okay, Talishri, quick 20 seconds. If not mandatory, at least make it valid.
Because you see, there is already a mediation cell in a family court, and if Indians were not as litigious and could understand that marriage is a lifestyle that should be ended on the same peaceful note that it begins on, then the mediation processes would become far more successful. However, if you look at the record that is there in terms of mediation cells around, in terms of trying to bring a quietus to dispute, it doesn't seem to happen. So I'm not sure whether bringing about a prenup is going to bring about lesser acrimony, because as Mr. Jha pointed out, and as my learned friends would be aware, there are very many ways in which a contract, even if it is a prenup or otherwise, can be challenged in terms of whether both the parties were equal, whether there was any force or coercion that was required. Having said that, should a prenup come into place, it is only going to, I want to be very clear here for the viewers, that any prenup is only going to look at the contract of marriage between two parties and not the children. Rights of children are always decided by court in terms of a parenting plan. Madam who spoke right before me is perhaps not aware, but parenting plan may not be called parenting plan.
Okay,
Having
okay.
said that, it has been a part of the Indian legal system from the very day that the Children's Child Right Convention was implemented
Okay.
worldwide. So in that sense, no, it is not true
Okay,
that
we'll
courts
have
do
to
not look
see,
at parenting plan.
or
They
we'll have to
always
see how the
looked at
Indian
it.
social
So
fabric
that is
changes
there.
as per
I
the
think there is a more
modernity.
realistic
Yeah.
view needed in terms of what
Okay.
the courts do rather than a layperson view here. Thank you.
Okay, okay. We'll have to see what the courts do and how Indian society really evolves in time. But with that, Ishani, I'm so sorry. I have paucity of time. I'll have to wrap this up here. Thank you to all my guests, Deepika Narayan Bhardwaj, Ishani, and Talish, as well as Subhash Jha. Thank you very much for joining us tonight and sharing your perspective on this contentious prenup agreement that India has to look at one point in time.